We're going to do the advanced paper making, and I'm going to grab my other sheet too that has what we're exactly doing. So we're going to continue to learn how to make paper and learn the advanced paper making methods of paper making, pulp pouring. We're going to learn a watermark, we're going to learn to emboss, and we're going to embed some items in paper, probably mostly flowers. So we did a little bit of that yesterday, but we're going to continue on with that. To start, I'm going to do another sheet, and I think my vat might be a little thin, so we'll have to see. We might have to start by making some more pulp. So you put it in, shake it. And then the simplest way to make a watermark is what we talked about yesterday, is you just, well, you can either spray it if you have water in your bottle, or if you don't, you can just put water from your vat back on it. All of these little dots will now be a watermark in your paper, and you can put bigger ones or smaller ones, and it'll be just kind of a polka dotty piece of paper there with watermarks. And that's the simplest kind of watermark you can make, is just to add the water in a dot form. And it's really easy. It kind of looks like a moon, or sometimes they call that a rain piece of paper. And you want to add enough of them. And I might add a few more now that I put the towel on it, because otherwise, once you put it down on the Formica, they'll all disappear on you. So, but you can see you're just getting kind of a pebbly look to your paper. I'm going to grab a piece of Formica from over here, because I'm grabbing a couple. And then I'll just put it back out over here. And remember, we're using our towel when the paper is side up, and our sponge when our paper is side down. Just get our sheet back over here. Now you won't be able to see your watermark from this side until it's dry, because that side is going to be underneath for now. We'll sponge it off. And pick it up. So now it looks like just a plain sheet of paper from this side, but your watermark, when you take it off, will be on the other side with those little bubbles. Another really easy way to make a watermark is to take a piece of foam core and you cut it and you lay it on your mold. So you can just lay it on in a strip here, and this will give you 2 strips basically of a watermark. And again, I probably see if I get another sheet out of this vat. It's getting pretty thin, but I might steal some of your red pulp to put in there. We'll see.
You want me to throw it in the soap?
Sure.
It's still a little damp, so it might not take long.
Get it in there. This one you can kind of see because it's thin, you can see the mark through there, so we'll see.
And you do the watermarks. I mean, I think of watermarks in terms of watercolor paper to tell me whose paper it is, so I know what I'm using.
And so you can do a watermark. So people, a lot of times, if you want a fancy watermark, you can, well, let me get this one off of here. So you can make designs with your watermarks this way. You can also sew. So some people, if they're making a lot of paper, will sew. This is going to be really thin. They'll sew on their screen. So I could sew a JG on my screen, and then every piece of paper I made would have a light JG on it. And this is going to be a really thin piece of paper, so we'll see if it actually pops off right. It might not. But this is just an easy way to make kind of fun paper with different designs in it that are the same color. So it's monochromatic, but you get a design in it that way. In it. Because it's really thin. So and this is going to be a super thin piece of paper. I need to add to my, and this is how you can tell I need to add to my vat. Also, my paper just keeps getting thinner and thinner. And so if I tried to pull another sheet from that vat, it just doesn't have, you can see it's just getting really, really thin. I need to add some more pulp to it. So I can either add purple, I could add another color. If I cut a diamond shape, now I have a simple stencil, and it's the other way around. So this, if I put this on my mold and decal this way, now it would provide me a stencil. Whereas if I do it this way, it's going to make a whole sheet with embossing. So this provides both things. So it's kind of handy to have around for stenciling and for embossing. So you could use this piece for the embossing and this piece for the stenciling. You can do that. That's going to be cool.
I can go to mine on Saturday after I get done cashiering.
The best place to get this actually is Dollar Tree if they have it in stock.
Okay.
Because then you get like this pack of it with all of these pieces.
Right.
Is $1 this size.
Okay.
And if we go by there, I can get some too if you want.
I'm just working on a list over here.
I know, and we're just doing things. It's weird. It's
you do a lot of things on autopilot. You do a lot of things on autopilot before you.
Well, and mostly, yeah.
I'm trying to not go a little more.
All right. Walmart is right next to the Dollar Tree too. So. I have 2 for her.
Oh, okay.
Actually, and yeah, that's gonna take. I realized we weren't taking any still pictures either of the process. take these off? Yes. I think it didn't get quite enough pulp underneath there.
That's my shopping list as we go. And I figure it's construction paper, it can take anything.
For a time, but until it disintegrates. My husband's mother made all of his scrapbook on construction paper from when he was little, and it just...
Well, that's what we had.
Yes, I know.
That and manila paper.
Yep, and so now it's just sadly disintegrating.
Well, I think it is all.
What's this? I'm wondering if it's the big chunks in here that's making it do that to you, and not the. So. Oh, but see, it floated up. Yep. And so that might be. Is it the middle one that's giving you the trouble?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, so since it's floating up, it's not going to give you too much of a watermark unless we... Let's see, that's going to give me more watermarks because I'm going to get a little bit of the tears of it, but that'll then do it if I do that to it. And that's kind of cheating, but you're still getting a little bit of fiber.
Okay, at which point do I join these two sheets?
You need another.
Yeah. Now there's one under here.
Oh, well then you just take it off.
Okay, so that is not attached to this, that's just a spare sheet.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this one, did we bought this one? Yet? I can't remember.
Oh, yes, we did that.
Okay. So then we want a little water on this one, or yeah, that one's fine. Let's see, and then we want to. So have you been sponging it on this side? So then it should.
So let me just kiss this off.
So that's where you're ending up in trouble, that it's floating up, so it shouldn't be getting the stuff underneath it. But maybe if we just don't take quite as much water out of it. Because they should look like that. So I think, and that's where the glue is better. I use a glue to make things. And you don't want to glue directly onto your screen because it will be there for, well, you can pick it off, but it melts the screen is the bad part of that. So you don't want to glue onto your screen. But then again, so just like the watermarking, if you don't glue directly onto your screen, I have glued directly on it. If you don't glue directly onto your screen, it will sometimes float up. So there's pros and cons. You can glue directly onto your screen, but if you want your screens to last, it's not the best idea. You can also glue directly onto here, and these we have a lot more of. And if you glue directly onto here, then the embossing will actually stay right in your paper and it'll emboss. So I can just take my glue gun and I can write words, I can make flowers, so I can just write "be kind" in my right where I'm going to dry my paper. And I'll try to put it in the middle so that my 5x7 will go. Oops, I now need more glue. I got almost. I got be kind. Now I got be kind. Okay. So then I'm going to let this dry a little bit, but it can dry while we're making our another sheet. So you guys can kind of see where I wrote "be kind" with my glue, and this will just stay under it the whole time it's drying, and that's what'll make the embossing. So that's a little different from the watermark. The watermark we take out before it dries, and it's just it's a pretty simple thing, and the embossing stays with it the whole time it dries. And we want to make sure that the glue is a little bit dry before we do it. And so then you're just going to do the same sheet forming. Again, you want to make sure you push into the corners, because if you get the water out, pump it up. You can see our words starting to come out there. And as it dries, it'll be more apparent. You want to use your sponge to get all around those words so that you'll be able to see the embossing when it's done. And make sure I'm not tripping over. You guys can see my words.
Okay.
You guys want to try it? Okay. All right. Down, and then you can beat them, and they look really fancy.
I do have pony beads I can share, because I get tired of picking up off the floor after hurricane.
There you go. So I'm just using a loose sewing, and I'm sewing this on to experiment with this too, so we can show that it will stay, because it's the slick surface, and this will fill it in so that it will not do that for me again. And this should take us, actually this will take us into pulp painting, because this is kind of, basically I'm adding pulp to the sheet by starting to pulp paint into it with my advanced paper making formats, and people would get a choice of what they wanted to do in your class. Like that they wouldn't need to do all of them if you didn't have time in a day, that you could demonstrate it all, and then they would be able to choose what they wanted to do. And we've done embossing and we've done watermarking. So maybe after you guys do this one, I'll demonstrate the pulp painting portion, and then
Did you want to picture my lovely bedspread, Sean? I don't know if this is going to work or not.
Hey, experimenting is a big part of paper making. That's why I like to say that paper making is part science, part art, because you get to do so much sciencey experimenting with it. All right, so let's see. This is going to be my diamondy watermark. And it definitely works better to sew it in with this one. You can see there isn't getting paper underneath the outside of it anymore. But I will get additional watermark where that yarn is going over. I'm going to steal a pair of scissors. Thank you. Take this off. No worries. So this that Caitlin is doing is the ideal kind of watermark. This is a traditional type of watermark where you just sew it in, and it should be about perfect. Yes, see? Yeah. So watermarks are meant to be just small little. So that is why the one that I was using with this big diamond that was meant to be more like a stencil didn't really work so well, because, but again, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, because paper making and art is all about experimenting, and you shouldn't be afraid to just do something and have it not work, because if it does work, then you've invented something new that works and you have a whole new technique. So, you know, always give it a shot. Question for you, and for you actually, the pulp painting, we're going to do that, but we're going to have to mix up a whole bunch more colors to do that. Do you just want a simple like explanation of pulp painting, or do you want that all of that part filmed too, or does it matter? Say you want to do, I don't have blue, but say you want to do a sunset and a mountain, right? And so a sunset and a mountain doesn't take too much of a stencil. So you could just start again with your pink up here, and
I've got some red if you want it.
or add in, we could do a pink and purpley one, right? And here's this thing that I can show you too. So pulp mixes like paint. So we can add the yellow, and if we wanted a little orange in our sunset, we could add a little pink to this, and it'll get to be kind of an orangey color. It depends on what color of the pink you have, but you can kind of see it turning to be kind of that sherbety. Oh, and if we add the red to it, it will for sure add, but I kind of like that sherbety color, but if you add a little more red, and you can see that as you mix your pulps, they mix kind of like paint, so we're getting that sherbety sunset orange, and you can put it in there. But like we were talking about before, this is why the stencils come in handy, which is what we're going to do next, because it's just pouring all over my vat. So if I don't want orange down in my mountain area, I'm going to have to cover them up later. But I'm getting a nice sunset look, and the purples are going toward the top, which is usually what you want, because in the sky that happens, right? You get your, and if I had a blue, I would maybe put it up there. Then I can take my green. Ooh, and remember, we don't want it to be quite that gloppy, so we'll add a little water. And we'll see if we can get some mountains. And to get the mountains started, since I don't have a stencil, I would probably use my spoon and add my mountain shapes in here, like just maybe a mountain going that way and another mountain coming up into my sunset. And this is just how you build into a pulp painting without a stencil, and it makes a pretty easy pulp painting small one. And once I get pulp covering my mold, then it has something to stick to. Until it has something, and you can kind of see now that I'm using my spoon that it's sticking better. But if I poured back into it, so it has something to stick to, but when I pour into it, you'll see it kind of pushes it away also. So you have to be really careful pouring onto it, even once you have some pulp. So that's when the spoons come in handy. You can get a more accurate placing of your pulp. And I can get my mountains going. And again, I think I just have this one color green, but if I was, maybe I'll make a lighter green. I would probably want a darker green, but this will make me a lighter green, and I can then make one of the mountains be looking more like it's in the foreground here if I get the lighter green going. And again, you have to remember that this is going to dry lighter. So that'll be fun too. And once we get the mountains in there, we can put a sun in. And I'm going to put a little more of the darker green. And I am going to use this kind of gloppy one. Actually, I'm going to put a little less of it. Put some of it in here. So I've got this one pretty light. And the fun thing about a pulp painting is you can really build it up and get a lot of texture. And they take a while to dry, but you can really build up and get texture going in your pulp painting. And it depends on what kind of pulp you're using, but you can really get quite a lot of texture going on your painting. Get our light green back in over here. Let me get a little in the middle there. I think I don't have quite enough mountain. Then you can take a little bit of the pulp and you can add it in with the paintbrush. So you have to really get the pulp onto the brush, and you just kind of add it in. And I'm going to take out some water because I'm getting it pretty wet, so you can see you're getting a little bit of a landscapey thing going there. And you can keep adding in and adding in. And you could take a little bit of the yellow. So say I wanted my sunset to center, say the sun was centering there, I could take my paintbrush and get a little bit of the yellow, and I'm going to get a little bit of this yellow and just add it into that little crag in the mountains there and make it look like there was a sun, and then keep adding in more and more. as I was going out and adding in more green to there. And you could add, with your paintbrush, you could add lines into your mountains too. So you can kind of see the separating of the green here. And you could make a darker green. Actually, if I wanted to make a darker green, I can probably do it by adding a little bit of the purple and green together here and getting a more shadowy color and putting it in down here. And I may have put too much green in the purple, but we can add in some more shadowy color down in there. I don't know if I have any more purple. Starting with a picture and some tape, because if you just used your picture for a stencil, then it would bleed all over the place and it wouldn't work. So you need it to be waterproof. And so I'm going to dry this off a little bit more. The way you make your stencil is you just take your packing tape and hopefully find the end. Do these tables stick?
Yes.
I think they're wet.
I mean, they're pretty good for that.
I think they're wet enough that it won't stick.
Well, it won't stick forever, but they'll hold it down.
Oh, I don't need it to hold down. I'm gonna stick tape on both sides. So I want it to be, and you guys can do this if you want to, yours too. So it doesn't really flow all over the place. So you can have a guide kind of. And I call this part of the process color blocking, where I just look and I look at the picture and I say, okay, I'm going to want it really, and I don't know if I have enough colors of green, but we'll try it. So I look at it and I take this part is going to be my darkest green, and and then I'll cut it again here. And oftentimes I print another picture of this picture so that, because I'm going to lose all of the details here when I'm cutting it apart.
I can go do that.
Oh, no, you don't have to do it for now, but just when you're doing it in the classroom, then, because then I'm going to cut, I just put them up in front of me to look at, because you're going to be painting, right? Because you're going to use these stencils, but then you're painting back into it to get your details. I think we just need to get the gist of this down so that you will know what you're doing. It doesn't have to look exact. I don't think I have enough greens right now to make this look exact, but I will do what I can. So I get the basic colors here, because I even have, a lot of greens in here. So I get my basic pieces, and then this is a 5x7, so I'll put it back on here, and then I lay out all of the pieces that I cut out, and I would look at the pulp colors that I have and say, this one is almost dark enough. I'm going to add a little bit more of, actually if I add red into the green, it'll get. Pulp painting is you are making your own paint, so it's not like you can just go and say, oh, I would like a tube of crimson, a tube of cobalt. You have to actually figure out what color pulp is going to work to make your own colors, and that's a little bit. And like this one, I'm getting flecks of, even though it shouldn't have, I'm getting flecks of.
There were some seeds in the red.
Yeah, so I'm getting flecks of things. But you know what? That also makes a pulp painting. So, and I can start. These are small pulp paintings. So a lot of times when I'm doing a big one, I start by pouring in, and you can start by pouring in, and your little stencil will help you there. Keep it from going into your next color. And when you get enough of the color that you want in down there, you can also, again, use a towel on the bottom to take a little bit of that water out so that you just don't have so much of a mess of water, and it'll help your stenciling. So then you can take this stencil off, the next one, and then you want to add this stencil back onto your top so that it's helping you out again, right? So that then I just have this next area, which is then the light green. So I take my light green, and I'm just going to keep using spoons because this is such a small area again, and I just flow it into that light green area. And again, if I go into the other areas, it's okay, but this stenciling just allows me the hope of not getting too much of that light green into the dark green, and I get a base for my paper. One thing you do have to remember when using the stencils is, and this is again an argument between pulp painters, there's some people that will lay a base sheet of white and then they'll paint with their stencils on top of it. But then there's other people that will argue that's not a true pulp painting because you have a base sheet. So it's easier. But if you look at the back of that kind of pulp painting, you don't see like true color all the way through. So it's almost like you're making yourself a canvas then, and you're not really painting with the pulp. You're then painting on a canvas of paper that you have made. So it's just 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. So now I can choose. I usually try to go kind of look at it here and do some different kind of impressionistic, okay, I have lots of different greens, and or if I'm being really, like we've talked about how, when you don't mix them up, you get like different greens when you're just pouring it. So I can do like spoon in, and I can get all of my different greens going without really having to say, okay, that's a lily pad. I can get different greens going, and I can look at my picture and know that it's way darker down in the bottom. And I might, if I'm wanting to be really accurate, make more stencils, and say, okay, I'm going to cut out some more of those. But you can also just be more impressionistic with the paper and get different colors of green in there and go back and use your spoon and paint them in too. It's just to kind of get a feel for having them in. But you do, when you have the stencils on, you are going to need to go back and make sure that you have enough paper. So like when I'm doing the stem of the water lily, I kind of overlap a little bit, even though just to make sure that I have a full sheet of paper and I don't have holes. Like, that when we looked at what was the bunny with the sheet around it, otherwise you'll get little holes around your stencils, and that you don't really want either. So now I can take my water lily shape out and put this one back on, and you can kind of see there's a generic water lily, there's a generic water lily shape in there, and I can pull some. This makes it stronger. Whenever I pull water out of it, it makes it stronger, and now I can pick it up and show you that there's that water lily shape there. And then I can put it back on and drop in the yellow. Where did I put my spoon? And you can pretty much make stencils of anything, right? So you can pick what you want and make stencils of them. Some things work easier than others. The more detail you try to get and the smaller you try to get, the harder it is to do a stencil of it. But it doesn't mean it's impossible, right? Because you're using the... So now once I've got colors color blocked in, then I take off all of the things. And you can see it doesn't really look like a painting yet. It just has the pieces color blocked in. And then I will just take my spoon and go back in and make it. And this is when you're laying in the texture, right? So you're laying more pulp in, but you have the colors of where you know they're supposed to go now. So you can now lay in more color. And this is where you want to get the lines to be disappearing too. So you just start going back in, and I would put back together my picture up here too so that I could see it, so that I know kind of what I'm painting from too, so I can see where my water lilies are. I know where my water lilies, that was funny. So I can see where my water lilies are. Wait, I don't have them. Yeah, and then I can put in some of their leaves underneath them. And I can paint in their stem. Okay, let me pull the water out of it, because if I hold it up right now, it will all fall off the screen. Okay, so it's not quite done, but it's got the basics down on there of the water lilies. And so then you would just keep building up layer on layer on layer until it gets more detail.